a panel on tech and innovation, monitoring trends and tech and AI with Marina Hadjipateras as our moderator. Thanks.
AI and automation every day. Very excited to introduce you to everybody. My name is Marina Hadjipateras. I run an early stage venture capital fund called TMV. We invest in legacy industries that are ripe for change, just like maritime shipping. I'm going to hand it over to Sean now, and would love for everybody to talk about your background a little bit, the company, and the problem you're trying to solve.
Ooh. Hey everyone, is this working? There we go. Let's move this. Sean Simmons, I'm the co-founder of Robot Toolworx. We're an AI-enabled software company focused on sustainment, maintenance, and repair. Not just for maritime, but also for aviation and defense and mobility. Prior to my company, I was an investor, probably the only other ocean tech investor besides Marina at MVP Capital. And prior to that, I was an aviation mechanic. Paul.
Hi everyone, my name is Paul Albert Lebrun. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Nodal Networks. We're building an AI assistant for leaders in terminal operations, help them squeeze out performance in their operations. My background's not at all in shipping and logistics. I'm from the space industry, spent the last 5 years launching satellites to low Earth orbit. So happy to go into how I went from space stuff to maritime stuff, maybe over a beer or something like that.
Hi everyone, my name is Alexandra Ciobotaru. I am the head of innovation automation for Maersk, and I just relocated to the US 8 weeks ago, so I welcome any tips. I am here overseeing our automation roadmap in terms of what to bring new to the company, but also how to deploy and integrate technology in our group. I previously worked for the investment team of Maersk, based out of Copenhagen, where we invest in supply chain tech and decarbonization. I'll be happy to talk to you about those topics as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Aquino. I'm a solutions expert for Windward. Windward is a maritime AI trademarked company. And what we do is we apply artificial intelligence for governments, for the commercial sector, to detect sanctions evasion. And we also detect supply chain risk. So in a previous life, I was an ex-US intelligence officer, and then went over to anti-money laundering and due diligence at JP Morgan, and came over to Windward when I got a smell of the regulations that came out in May 2020, and have been working with big enterprise companies trying to solve for that since.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll definitely get into each specific company and the details there, but I have a general question for everybody, which is that AI adoption in maritime comes with a major hurdle. It means integrating new technologies into legacy systems and also changing the mindset of one of the oldest industries in the world. And I was wondering, just in terms of building your company and working with Maersk, how you've been able to tackle this and how you're moving forward with this.
Okay, I'll start then. A few years ago, Maersk unveiled their new strategy, maybe 6-7 years ago, an integrated logistics company, factory to sofa. That meant that we moved from general carrier into other areas of business, including logistics and services, and of course supporting development of technology beyond in terminals, customs, and other logistics services. When we talk about AI, I want to take us back to what does it mean to want to be an integrator. It means that ideally there's a day when everything will work seamlessly. And for that, you need all the different players and all the different technologies that you've previously worked with in different capacities to either be located in the same infrastructure or to communicate with them very easily. within them. This is something we've been working on for the past few years. There are a couple of avenues, of course, that we've taken. As a carrier, we have a lot of our own infrastructure. In other areas, we've acquired and also developed, co-created and co-developed technology. And we also have an innovation roadmap where we have partnership strategies with startups and scale-ups. Those of us that are more agile and can pivot faster. As a large company, we, of course, would like to be agile and pivot fast. And I believe that from the experience I've had of a few years in Maersk, we are good at making those decisions after we see how the world moves. But realistically, we also need to work with other companies that can support that. So that's kind of the setup that we have started from a few years ago. Moving on, AI, big disruptor to what's happening and what's to come. Of course, we have our own setup in the company, and we use it, I would say, quite successfully already. We look at visibility, really big. We look at integration and prediction. That's something that is going to be even better in the future. Factory to sofa also means that we will able to be more reliable also in terms of time and details of any fulfillment orders. So there are areas where we already see development. Is it easy? Well, I don't think it can be. I think for everyone it's a journey, especially for such a large company. But I believe we're setting up the structure to be even more successful in the future. And yeah, we have a couple of success stories that I think we can deep dive in if interested.
Thank you. Paul?
Sure.
It's a general question, but...
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. I think integration is... It's top of mind, and it's funny because coming into this industry, and I'm new into the industry, and one of the things I've learned is just how much weight the word integration kind of carries. It's almost like you talk about integration, all of a sudden you've got like a chill down your spine kind of situation, and rightfully so. I think when you look at technology in the past, especially AI technology, companies that have approached terminal operators or port authorities or whatnot, they're proposing integration timelines that can last 12 to 18 months. And so that's a tough sell, because you're going on a journey with this technology company and you're hoping that at the end you've arrived at destination, and sometimes you don't even know where the destination really is, because the technology is moving so quick. And so I think there's sort of two things that we've learned, at least on our side, to kind of know about, and that's what are the two drivers of long integration times. I mean, there's multiple, but the two that are, I think, really important to talk about are, one, requiring live real-time data from your operation. That's really challenging because now you need to integrate into all of the subsystems, and that takes a long time. A lot of the subsystems don't have connectivity, so you have to build the connectivity to those subsystems. So that's the first thing. If you want to limit integration challenges, you don't necessarily need live real-time data to prove return on investment, which is another hairy topic in the world of AI, because it's like, how do you prove ROI? I think that's often a question, and I think if you can do it faster by not requiring all these sort of live real-time integrations, it goes a long way. The second driver is just not necessarily needing all the data under the surface of the sun. And I think a lot of startups have, come and ask for everything. And as an engineer myself, I would love to have all the data in the world. But the approach, at least that we're taking, is sort of a surgical approach. What is the problem that the customer is facing, or the challenge? And then how do you sort of identify the exact data that can go and answer the question that the customer has, and then you work in lockstep from there. So that's my take on integration. I think it's a really important topic, and technology these days is allowing us to kind of cut integration timelines from the original 12 months to 2 to 3 weeks, if you're doing it in this sort of surgical way. So that's my take.
Yeah. You wanna?
Yeah, I'll go. AI I view really much as more of a tool, right? You look at it as mobile. Everyone was kind of like, this is going to disrupt the entire industry, and more than anything, enabled everybody. And that's how I really view artificial intelligence. Back to Paul's point on the data, the way we're approaching it is I don't need everything. We're actually building our entire platform to be on-premise and siloed. I'm not sharing your data with your ship owner competitors or other port terminals. It's yours. I don't need anything. I'm just a technology provider for your business. And I want to make it so we're enabling your business and, making you more money at the end of the day. I don't want to be giving anyone any other special treatment and, undercutting your business. I think as the industry, it's kind of like our job to educate a lot of the people in the room here as well to kind of like show like, hey, this is only going to help you guys. And on the integration side, compared to other industries, like it will take a bit longer. It's going to require me being on site and kind of seeing what those specific data needs are. But it's kind of like our job to kind of recognize that.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest challenge with AI is the word AI. I've had several conversations with probably many of you in this room, and it's really kind of funny to see the attitude that the industry had towards it about 4 years ago to today. So 4 years ago, I would start talking about AI, and people would say, it sounds over-engineered. I don't need a space shuttle to go to Walmart. This seems expensive. What are you, why are you trying to push this AI on me? And fast forward to today, I will show people generative AI results, which is saving them, 20 minutes for every 30 minutes they spend. And you would be surprised that the attitude is now cavalier, where it's like, oh yeah, well, it's just like a ChatGPT. So we blew past anyone being impressed by it and went from this is crazy, it's not real, to oh, it's just AI. And so the way we solve that is to have, as you mentioned, it's a tool, outcome-focused discussions. AI is not magic, but it can do things that was previously not possible, especially when it comes to integration. And at Windward, we're actually completely changing our business model. So many of us have heard the phrase software as a service, which is basically another screen to log into to tell you some information. And we've changed that now. So now we're saying service as software, which to the points here about integration, you're going to need solutions experts on your site. You're going to have to show us your decision support matrix. The days of sifting through an API catalog is done. And instead, we're going to have to talk about AI agents talking on your side. And we can speak a little bit more about that or at the bar later, but it's definitely a mental thing with AI.
Thank you. And I completely agree. I mean, as an investor, I think, and within this industry, it's not one that fully, I think now does embrace innovation, but in the past, things have been more private and less transparent. And so that hurdle is also just gaining trust, which we talk about with founders, and is gaining trust with your partners within the industry, even more so than saying, I have the most amazing product and you have to use it. I think that would cause some resistance even, but gaining trust within the industry is something that I've seen as being incredibly important, and then creates collaboration, so completely agree with you there. Maybe I'll keep with you, Tim, and ask you a little bit about over the past few years. We've seen some geopolitical tensions, market disruptions, and new regulations change the risk landscape. What key shifts in maritime risk management stand out to you?
Customization, for the most part. So you might be concerned about grain laundering. So we need to come up with a specialized risk model to detect that. You might be interested in calculating detention and demurrage at scale. So we'll have to do a custom AI model that helps you with that. You might be worried about illegal fishing. So all of those will require a bespoke trained model. And so what I've seen in the past, and that's actually, it's unusual for Americans to buy this way. Americans, as an American, right? They want to buy off the shelf. They want the Model T. So anytime you show up and say, hey, we should do a bunch of custom stuff for you, they basically resist and say, well, I want to know what everyone else is doing. I want to buy off the shelf, and then we'll talk about customization later. But now, with the pace of change, we need to be talking customized from the get-go. And that's where generative AI helps, because all of that effort and integration and customization is much, much faster if I can just prompt engineer the AI to give you the result, the end state, in the beginning, rather than, again, create a bunch of data points that you consume and process and turn it into what you need. So that's probably the key shift is customization from the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Turning it over to you, Paul. I know that we've had discussions before, working in the port space. When you've seen one port, you've seen one port. And that's sort of the way things work. And I'd love for you to just elaborate on what that means as you're building, a product that is so heavily reliant on ports and how you're navigating.
Yeah, that saying, I think, scared a lot of founders to build sort of quote unquote SaaS companies in the past. Because of what you were talking about, where, if you think about that, every port is sort of different. When you've seen one port, you've seen one port. I mean, that means you're having to build a bespoke piece of software per port that you go to. And obviously the differences, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, are anything from, the labor rules, the regulatory landscape, the weather that can occur, the kind of cranes that are there. Like every terminal, every port has its own set of variables. So there's a huge variability problem. There was, that variability still exists, and drove integration timelines and cost, because of what it means for the terminal operator is like they're having to basically buy a net new piece of software. You can't sort of build something across the board. So that's what it means to say, when you've seen one port, you've seen one port. And I think just going back to the point about generative AI and the other word is like, if you've heard of ChatGPT, that's the fundamental technology that's being used. For the first time ever, and I want to stress this, it is possible to address the variability problem. That is not something that was possible a few years ago. I think that's been the net change in the technology landscape. And so what that enables is less expensive technology that can actually scale to across ports and terminals, because it can adapt and understand and learn the different variables that are at play. Finally, it goes back to this ROI piece, which is you can prove ROI a lot faster, rather than saying, trust us, after 18 months, this is going to be great. This AI thing is going to revolutionize your port. In this case, you focus on, we can actually build something that will understand your terminal or your port within just a few weeks. And then you tell us if you see ROI. The experience goes that I think people don't expect that at this point we can build technology at the pace that we can. So that's the situation with when you've seen one port, you've seen one port.
And a few weeks ago, we were talking about the data that you scrape from the ports and that you have these partnerships with. And do you mind just spending like a minute talking about what you're actually doing in the data and how you're gathering that data and using that data for each of your partners right now?
Yeah, sure. I think that the way to think about it is, not to go into the weeds, but there are two types of data sets that exist out there. There's sort of structured data, and there's unstructured data. The structured data is what you'll find in a database or logged in an Excel sheet that you can then port into a Power BI tool or into a dashboard. This is what sort of the industry has known for many years now. The unstructured data is data that exists in an unstructured way in reports, in emails, and a plethora of other sort of types of even shift notes. This is data that has never, ever been leveraged. Because before, you're not going to go and ask somebody to go count how many times somebody said X word in the last 10,000 emails that were sent across the company. So what we're doing is we're marrying those two. We're marrying structured data and unstructured data. And what that allows you to do is actually provide the context behind the quantitative data, behind this structured data. So if you're looking at a dashboard, you're like, okay, this is great. It's telling me I'm off target. But then the next natural question is, well, why are we off target? And it turns out that the answer lives oftentimes in the email chains, in the reports, in the notes that have already been produced. They just haven't been leveraged. So that's also something that's kind of been a net change in the technology landscape over the last just 2 to 3 years. So it's pretty nascent.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me because you're pulling, literally, you're asking everyone, and you said that like, willingly, like giving you all of this data, and then you can put it all together for them. So creating a lot of value there. Sean, just, I met you as an investor 5 years ago, and now you're a founder, which is fantastic. And I'd love to just hear, in a few minutes about that journey and what led you to become a founder and focus on Robot Toolworx, what you're building now.
Yeah, of course. As you know, the job of a seed stage private capital software investor, you spend half your day just meeting with founders. I think I was taking anywhere between 5 to 15 pitches a day, roughly 50 pitches a week, estimated out to 1,500 companies a year, typically, just screening. I'd say out of all those sectors, and when I was in VC, I only covered the, quote unquote offline sectors. So maritime, supply chain, manufacturing, industrials, construction, defense. I maybe spoke to 50 maritime companies. There's not a lot out there. And the few that were, I don't really, none of them are in this room, right? And I doubt any of you have actually spoken to them. There's a saying in Silicon Valley, go fast and break things. And I don't think that applies for the maritime sector. You break something, you're never getting another call again. Everyone in this room would know about it. So, as I was kind of looking for a lot of the problems and tailwinds in the sector I was so passionate about, which was a lot of the labor problem in the aging sector of infrastructure that was, a lot of the U.S. economy. I think one of the stats is 60% of ships are made in China now. Well, like, U.S. ain't making any. Our stuff needs to last. So it was kind of just one of those areas where, like, all right, I'm actually, talking to Marina every other week, meeting interesting people in the sector. I kind of understand that this is not going to be an industry to just, go hire a couple of offshore engineers and can get ChatGPT to go do something real quick, and I'll, start doing a $5K a month PLG SaaS model up to the right that Silicon Valley is so used to. This is going to be something I can actually navigate, but understanding the milestones that I need to hit from a fundraising standpoint that will, lead to our success. So we're there for the long term, and we're not just going to, burn through a couple $1 million, and my investor would be pissed off at me. So.
And then in that, just do you mind spending like 30 seconds or a minute on what Robot Toolworx really is focusing on? Yeah.
So, prior to being an investor, I definitely don't have the traditional path into venture capital. I was a seaplane mechanic. So I used to work on private Cessnas. And, when I was working on planes all the time, every single day, I'd be working on the same 7 aircraft, by the way. It wasn't like anything crazy. Something went wrong, like every time. And my main technician, my A&P mechanic, airframe propulsion mechanic would be like, Sean, just go check the manual, and the manual would be wrong and be missing pages. Or the mechanic that was in Charleston messed up something, and there was just no real system of record how to do anything. So what we're doing at Toolworx is we're taking data from all other unstructured sources and structured environments, whether it be the OEM manufactured manuals, technician manuals, maintenance logs, and all other sources, putting it into our own AI simulation 3D environment, where we allow the maintenance teams, crew members, shipyards, dry docks, whether it be in maritime or aviation or defense, to essentially have the tribal knowledge on how to repair and fix anything. Maybe you've only worked on one type of ship. We are now enabling a dry dock to work on many. Eventually, we'll allow other sources to authorize on those procedures. Coast Guard can be like, yes, no, can or can't do it. And back to Paul's point, you need to structure the data. Once we have a lot of that structured data, we can then use that and put it into automation like robotics to do a lot of the maintenance tasks. But today, we're just kind of standardizing it all.
Awesome, thank you. Alexandra, I wanted to speak to you about Maersk and what you see as you're working and kind of leading the team in automation and robotics and innovation, what you see as the biggest kind of steps forward over the next 5 years. What are you focusing on? When I first started talking to Maersk, it was supply chain and looking at different things in supply chain, and then decarbonization was very, very big, and automation now, and would love to just hear from you what the initiatives are for like this year and then the next few years.
Yes, absolutely. In terms of innovation automation, something that I'm working with closely now, we look, of course, at resilience and safety. Those are two of our main pillars. And what does it mean? Well, it means that we need to be prepared for an uncertain world. How do you do that? Obviously, you can create a roadmap, you can plan, but you should also be ready and agile. Pivoting is something that we work with a lot in our setup, and we try to also spread that culture of innovation, of educating and bringing together different ideas in order to be ready for what's happening around the world. How to adapt and integrate faster. That's a big one for us. We talked here about, the speed, the fact that we can solve problems we didn't really think that were solvable because it will take time, and how are we going to prioritize that? That's it. Now we can solve some of those problems. So how do we integrate that into our current strategy? That's another lever that we have to look at. In terms of how we partner for these plans, we have a external innovation setup where we created a, if you want to call it like that, operating system to partner with scale-ups and startups. So partners of different sizes. We also work, of course, with some more traditional robotics companies. We have a very large logistics and service business as well. So there we have, I would say, avenues that are very well known in the industry. And then you have those avenues where it can bring you more resilience, you can enhance safety on site, but then you have to think about ROI. And that's another discussion. How do you prove value if, for me to implement something, it will take a while until that implementation will actually bear its fruits. To do that, we need sponsorship. So in our setup, we have a executive-sponsored program for that. It proved successful, and I hope it continues to be something that we're all proud of. We also have a POC process, so proof of concept piloting process that we follow throughout the company. We also created a working group. So when you work with us, you also work with our colleagues in cybersecurity, enterprise architecture, procurement, and IT at large. And ideally, when it comes to deployment, we also are the sponsors and the supporters of the startup to be successful within a large company. Because something we don't necessarily know, or something that I didn't know, of course, moving in from the fast and agile startup world into a corporate, is that everybody wants to work with innovation, but actually implementing it takes quite a lot of time, and you need to shift a little bit also the way you look at working with a smaller company. Most of the startups, especially if they're working into a new field, they won't be able to have the same, they won't be able to move past some of the barriers you have as a large corporate. So how do you actually work within procurement if you can pass some of those barriers, right? Then we need to create the ecosystem for that to happen, and that's what we've been working on. Proudly, I've been part of that process. It's a process that has been sponsored and embedded into our strategy setup. So this is how we managed to bring in that innovation and then deploy it at scale. Still, of course, it doesn't happen overnight. I hope that in the future we will also be faster there. But yeah, it really starts with the process and with sponsorship in order to move the needle.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Tim, after this, but I have one more question for Alexandra as a follow-up, which is, it's amazing that Maersk has this, innovation department and is really focusing on this, but that's not the norm a lot of the time. And I think that I'm curious if you wanted to educate others about why it's so important, even though, to your point, like we all know what innovation is, and it's exciting, and there is a good return on it in terms of helping with safety and efficiency. But if you were to sort of want to educate others or your peers, what would you say about why they need to look at innovation as well?
It's a good question, because I personally was made to work in this environment. I fit that profile of a person that would show up and say, let's try everything. And working in such a big and cool company, I just moved from Denmark everybody knows Maersk in Denmark, so it's kind of a cool setup to be able to say I do innovation there. But we are constantly being challenged on the value we bring and how efficient this would be in X number of years. So don't think that we're not having those tough discussions. They happen often. And I think it should be like this because, of course, this is not a pet project. Ideally, we are also becoming faster, but also we're bringing the value that we claim to bring. So that's on one side. In terms of educating and in terms of investing, we have some programs with MIT where we bring some of our senior leaders into an executive program where we talk about supply chain management and AI automation at large. How will the future look like? We invest in that. We also are embedded into the strategy function for our investment setup. So that means that we cascade from a bigger picture into what are some of the areas that we as a group can impact. We are not a financial CVC, we are a strategic CVC, so all of our engagements are on a strategic level, and when we take board seats, we look at what can we bring to the ecosystem in order to maybe share some of that knowledge, and of course, understand from others that are disrupting what is it that we should look at that we're not looking at. So from those are the two main areas, and then the third one are the people that do this. If you do not want to be challenged and if you do not like the fact that you will probably fail every quarter at one of your projects, this is probably not the right role for you in the company. And I think that has been, something that is a reality of me now working in a corporate that I enjoyed it. I think that it fits and all my colleagues think that what we do really moves the needle.
Yeah.
And you need to really believe it and you need to show up to an executive leader and say, this didn't work out. Now we need to figure out how to, do something better next time, but it didn't get to that, And I think that's where we need to have that risk-taking as part of our ecosystem as well.
Yeah, I agree, because when it does work out, you have a competitive edge, which I think is, what you're looking for, and there.
And I might add, we do have a sandbox for testing those things. So when we talk to our customers, we do know that we have some customers that want to test with us, and there's some customers who say, when this works, we discuss. I think that's very fair. I think we also need to work with our customers and, work with their needs. So this has been, proven successful because if you can test in a sandbox, then you are able to replicate it with less risk, which is also more appealing for certain other audiences, right? So you kind of also work with the project that you have at hand. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to be adaptable in that situation as well.
Yeah, thank you. Tim, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into generative AI. Mm-hmm. and talk to you about how it complements traditional vertical AI models to enhance decision-making.
Yeah, so it's probably worth defining, just as a recap, vertical AI. So vertical AI is really good at sorting and categorizing things that are hard to detect. So a good example would be ship-to-ship meetings. So I could use transponder information, I could write a couple rules and say, did these two ships meet each other because they were next to each other for X number of hours? That's one way to do it. You're going to get a lot of false positives. So AI is really built for that type of problem. But that's just one example of how you can use vertical AI to refine these unstructured positional data into an activity timeline of what vessels are doing. And so once you can define what one vessel is doing and sequence its activities, you can do that for the global fleet. So if you have structured information about what vessels are doing across the world, you can define what is normal activity for the global fleet. Where are their seasonality trends? Where are their potential compliance hotspots? Et cetera, and so forth. And that's great, and I think we've lived in that world for about 3 years. What generative AI brings to it is, like a vertical AI model will tell you, hey, there's a 120% spike in tankers crossing the Panama Canal or whatever, some strait, and that's unusual. Where generative AI steps in is it explains why. It gives you the so what. And I think we're all used to dashboards. I think, Paul, you alluded to it before. And I don't think dashboarding is going to go away, but it's going to be complemented by generative AI explanations giving you the so what. So you need the two. You have vertical AI generating the insights, the, tapping you on the shoulder, telling you need to look at something, and then you have the generative AI agent that gives that, the so what. Here's the summary of facts, here's the historical context, here's a recommendation, and I think that's really what we're getting into now. And when I say what we're getting into now, like we're already in these proof of concept phases. This is being delivered already, so it's not like some far-fetched sci-fi thing.
Thank you. No, that's extremely helpful, like predictive and prescriptive in many ways, and solution-driven. And we're just going to open up for questions in 20 seconds, but Paul, I just wanted to finish here by asking you, and anyone else can jump in too, why now is the right time? Why is it the right time to create these partnerships? And we've touched on it a little bit, but maybe we have about 20 seconds.
Okay, challenge accepted. Well, I think, we were just talking about this. I think that there is a net, step function in the technology. I think that we have to just agree that this has happened over the last few years. And so it's sort of now is the time to leverage this sort of treasure trove of data that has never been leveraged before in this industry. So I think that's from a technology perspective. I also want to say that there is a mentality game. All right, I lost a 20-second game, but I'll finish real quick here. There is a mentality shift. And 1 year ago when we started the company, I was told numerous times that the hardest part was going to be the headwinds I would get from adopting technology in the industry. People wouldn't be willing to give you their data. They'd be kind of concerned about you leaking their data accidentally or whatnot. We haven't faced that problem at all. We faced the opposite problem, in fact, of the industry being opening their arms to us and giving us data and wanting to see where this technology can go. So I think now is the time, and I think what the industry is realizing, what our customers are telling us, is that there is a large cost to falling behind right now. The technology is moving at a pace that is just incredible, and so now is the time to get on board, because right now, otherwise you will absolutely fall behind on the technology. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't know if we have time for one question, maybe? Okay, thank you. I see two. Yeah.
Great conversation about that. The Norwegians have got the remote operations center technology and have proven also autonomous technology. How do you see that happening? Are we going to reach singularity anytime soon that we actually see autonomous navigation?
Does Maersk want to take this?
Well, definitely, the applicability, it depends on size, right? So I think when you look at deep sea, we've seen a couple of different technologies, and I personally haven't seen anything that can be at the current stage, looking at that long haul.
I think if you look at the comparison of autonomous cars, right? We're just now getting self-driving cars. That took 20 years of data gathering, and Tesla being at a cheap price, so every American can buy one for $200 a month, right? And it really only works in San Francisco. It doesn't really work anywhere else. So you look at overhaul trucking that Tesla's starting to do, and that's a straight line across Route 66. Deer comes in front of that truck, that thing hits it. Now in ocean, there's a lot of different variables, but the oceans are rough. And there's not a lot of data gathering that's really happening across the entire globe to understand that. We'll get into ferry autonomous shipping and, into the river systems in Hamburg and whatnot, but that's still going to be a 10-year data gathering cycle and then training that model. I think there will be a point where, we're talking a lot about AI today, but 3 years ago, that was an expensive overhaul to do. Back then it was called machine learning. You needed an army of engineers, now you don't. We'll see how quantum takes part of that, AGI. Is that going to be an environment where, maybe you just need two people and, one route of a ship, and they'll start making those decision makings. But in the near term, we're a long ways to go.
And I just want to add in terms of how the future will look like, an open question and maybe a reflection of our green transition and how are we going to get there. And I think that we need to collectively consider sustainability as part of our promise for the future, and look at those applicabilities, especially for long haul and for carriers. I wanted to just slip that in there before I end my point.
Thank you. I think we have one last question, and then
Yeah, so it's come to light recently that AI systems like ChatGPT and Google have actually been drawing some false information due to the way that they kind of just like open source all of their information. So my question to you is, with your models, how are you kind of accounting for some of those irregularities and trying to fish out some of the inconsistencies and the falsehoods?
Yeah, I can take some of this. So you can set the creativity for an AI model. It's called temperature. And you can set the temperature to 0 and make it not creative at all. Also, you have to choose either vertical or generative AI. And also AI is bad at math in a lot of ways. So you would use the generative AI to structure the data to create the table, but then you'd use traditional math functions to solve for that. So you supervise it, you set the temperatures as tolerant as what the client is ready to accept. Also, you compare it to what? Human beings also have errors. And if you're outperforming human beings in certain tasks, that's still a big victory.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think you should, when we think about OpenAI or ChatGPT or the Google model, these are just engines. And so we're building the car, and you can swap out the engine. I think that the part about hallucination, which I think is kind of the question here, like it's hallucinating, maybe it's coming up with stuff. I think your point is correct, which is, you have to give it the temperature, you have to train it. But what's more important, at least to our customers and to humans in general, is to understand how the system came to the conclusion. If you get an answer, and this was the problem with AI before, it's like, hey, here's this prediction. How am I supposed to trust that that's the correct one if you don't show me your work? It's like going back to grade 6. It's like I can give the answer to the math question, but if I don't show my work, I'm going to get an F, right? So the same thing applies here. We have to show the work. When the AI is doing the thing, it needs to show you how it came to the conclusion. And if the conclusion is slightly off, then that's where the humans come in and say, well, okay, it's good, you get a 90%. Okay, I'll stop talking now.
thank you so much. Thank you to HACC NACC. Thank you so much to all of our panelists here today. Appreciate everybody in the audience, too. Thank you.